That's Tropilunch.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. I was actually invited to come and speak on this topic by Tricia, the resident artist here at TCD. So I'm very flattered that she asked me to come speak on this topic specifically, and I'm happy to be here. So I'm going to share some reflections and experiences that I had recently while writing a children's book for Giant Pandas, and kind of use this case as an example about art science integration and text communication. So I invite you to join me, and feel free to, it's pretty informal, so feel free to ask me questions. As I'm speaking, I'm going to actually pass around copies of the book in case if you read through it and you see something that sparks a question, you have an opportunity to ask a question about it. So Shane brought his own. So yeah, feel free to pass it around and look through, and if you see anything that you have a question about at any point, just ask me. So yeah, I'm an assistant professor here in WEC, and so if you don't know me, just to kind of sum up who I am. There we go. So this kind of sums up who I am and my life experience in one slide. So it started as a kid for me when I was 6 years old. I received a panda stuffed animal for my birthday, and I was very enamored and excited to see it, and very fascinated by the species, wanting to learn more and more as I got older. It became a lifelong passion, obsession, borderline at many points. And so that's what I do now. I continue to follow that track in my life. So this is the pictures of research I do. A lot of my research is in China, Southwest China. I have so many friends and colleagues over there. Amazing place to work. People are incredible. Amazing collaborators, very kind, warm, and welcoming, and very bright. So it's been an awesome experience getting to know people as much as it's been fun working with the animals themselves. So here's some pictures, beautiful forest habitat. It's not a tropical forest system. It's temperate forest, but so many of the things that I've experienced working in this area have been so similar to a lot of the topics that I've heard discussed about during my time at TCD. So a lot of the same themes about balancing human livelihood and well-being with conservation. In China, thousands of people live inside protected areas, so there's a constant push and pull of, how do you take care of people's livelihoods at the same time, broad conservation goals. I think it's common across a lot of the issues that we study here. So to kind of start out, okay, why science communication? Why is it something that we should talk about or think about more broadly? I know I'm preaching to the choir here, you all know this well, but this is just something to get you thinking. This is a recent poll, the percentage of Americans that cannot name a living scientist, 72%. And 72% cannot name a living scientist, 27% can. So this just points to the gap that we have. We have some amazing knowledge in our fields, our respective fields, and not all of this gets out to the broader public for a whole variety of reasons. So in this poll box, it says what people answered. So what do you think? This is the American public. So I know people here from a lot of different countries. This percentage might be different in the country where you're from or where you work. So just take a moment to reflect on, guess what you think it might be. And maybe after this, you can look it up and see if it's similar to the US. But what do you think is the #1 scientist that people said? This is just a hint, 2021. Fauci. Y'all look good, yes. Anthony Fauci is overwhelmingly #1. 35% of people go Anthony Fauci. There's quite a lot of men in the group, which is something to stop and reflect on a bit. We have Jane Goodall represented though. Right. Jane. We have a lot of different types of scientists, some physical scientists, physicists, Bill Nye, just right there. But yeah, it just makes me reflect on sort of how far we have to go to get out there to the public. So there's a bridge we have to climb. So some perspective about what this means for conservation issues. Here's just an example. 73% of Americans think climate change is real. That's actually a significant improvement from previous years. That's actually doing better than we were, let's say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So that's hopeful in one sense. 57% of US adults think climate change is mostly caused by human activities. Again, I hope it would be larger than that, but this is better than it has been in recent history. So interestingly, in China, it's 66%. is a little bit higher than the US, and there's reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with religious beliefs and different things like that. A smaller percentage think it's going to harm them. And so it just points to, some of this bridge we have to climb and improvements that we need to be thinking about with science communication. And you can see it's, not evenly distributed across space. You can see some patterns here. For instance, look at Miami. Everyone in Miami already is experiencing effects of climate change. So yes, they're already being harmed potentially by climate change. Versus look at in other areas across the US, you see different patterns. So there's a lot to digest here and think about what's causing this, what to do about this, where do we go from here? And this is just one example of the ways of climate change. There's a lot of other topics that we can also reflect on and think about. So why is this happening? There's a lot of reasons why we're not that great at science communication as a whole, I think. This is one of the reasons. I think the psychologists out there will tell you that they're not surprised by this. Psychology of the human mind is such that we like to put things in categories. We like to put things in bins. We like to organize things. We like things to be ordered. So when we receive a new piece of information or a new fact, we like to put it together, integrate it with information that we already know, that we've already learned from the past. And then we can organize it and make it all make sense, and then we feel less stressed. We feel less overwhelmed by the information. So that's what we want to be able to do. If we're receiving new information that conflicts with facts that we already know or we already think we know, that can cause dissonance. And the tendency is to just reject the information because we don't know what to do with it. On a related topic, facts oftentimes conflict with beliefs. So this is what we see with some of the religious tension between religious and science information in the US in recent times. So if the facts conflict with beliefs, the tendency from the American psychologists will say is to reject the information. And so, it's kind of overwhelming to think about what to do about this issue. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about combating this. I would argue one of the ways that we could think about moving forward is to work with kids. Kids, these are my kids. I have two boys. They're 9 and 6 now, so this picture's slightly dated. But children have less rigid ways of knowing and being and thinking about the world. They're more open to all different types of ideas because they have less current information that's already been in their brain. And so they're less likely to just reject this. Oh, this doesn't match what I already know. I'm not going to accept this. They have so many empty bins. They're like, well, let me fill it with more information. So they're willing to accept new knowledge and learn about it. I definitely see that in my own kids, and I think you can see that across the scientific literature as well. So my kids my husband is Japanese, so it's really interesting to take them over to another culture and to see how receptive they are to that. Everything's like, oh, that's just how they do it here. That's interesting. Market in Japan, you can see like little octopuses inside these little shrink wrapped in the section of the supermarket you would know as the chicken. You go to Japan and you see pieces of octopus, and they're like, oh, okay, that's what they eat here. Let's take that home and put that up. There's no sense of like, this isn't normal. This doesn't match what I understand should be true in the world. They're just like, oh, that's different. So it's so refreshing to interact with kids and to see that willingness to accept new information. And I think we should really run with this when we're thinking about how to communicate our science, because it's a real opportunity to reach an audience that's receptive. So that's what I was trying to do with my children's book. So this is an interesting survey that was done by a group of social scientists in North Carolina. They surveyed 2,700 plus kids grade 4 through 8 in the US. And it's hard to see here, I should have made it a little bit smaller, but I will just tell you at the top. The number one most liked animal species is a dog. The number 2 is a cat. This makes sense. A personal relationship with a pet at home, these are their favorite animals. Number 3, right? You can see it right below this right here. Number 3 is panda. Panda is the 3rd most liked animal by kids in the US. And they have no immediate relationship. Dog and cat are number 1 and 2, overwhelmingly so. Number 3 is panda, and they have no personal relationship with pandas. They have no personal experience, unlike dog and cat, but it's number 3. And so it's really, I mean, as a panda researcher, I was like, woohoo, panda's number 3 is pretty exciting. most liked. And it speaks to the fact that they're charismatic species. For whatever reason, there's a lot of reasons we can hypothesize. They're very cute, they're very endearing, their behavior is really fascinating. The mom and the cub interactions are really interesting to people to watch. Here's an example. You can go online and find so many examples of different GIFs. Here's one. This is one of several hundred GIFs that you can find on giant pandas. It just kind of speaks to, there's something about them that just grabs people in. It's true for kids and adults. So as a panda researcher, I really want to it gives you a sense of responsibility with what you do. People pay attention, especially kids will definitely pay attention and will talk to you. And so you have a responsibility to really convey the best information you can about conservation more broadly, about climate change, or about any environmental issue more broadly, and get it right, because you know that they're listening. And that's kind of the responsibility that I feel with the work that I do. So I feel really bad for the spiders, the spider researchers. Spiders are not well liked among a lot of kids. They're feared by many kids, and it's too bad because there's so many amazing spiders and some that we should be conserving and all these things. So not every species is created equal as kids. Interestingly, some species are liked and feared at the same time. The number one being the wolf. Yeah, wolves are liked and also feared. Snakes, sharks, and spiders don't split very well. But interesting to think about what's driving those patterns. So with that information, I was contacted last year by a company called Neon Squid. It is a subsidiary of Macmillan, and they're a children's book publisher company. And they've been pushing out content the last few years and really growing in their reach and what they do. And here's some examples of the different books that they've created in recent years on big cats, bugs, horses, and sharks. And here's some more examples. They have a series called Young Zoologist. The series is designed so that each book is a species, and then each book is supposed to really walk a child through ages, let's say 5 through 8, walk them through all of the facts that we know now about the species, their biology, their behavior, their reproduction, their activities, anything that we can think of that might be important to know about the species. We want to try and share it with the kids. And so, yeah, there's all these different ones. These are all 2022 and 2023. Gives you a sense that this publisher is really a lot going on with them right now. So they contacted me to do the panda one. And so I was very excited. I said yes. So I will kind of take you on the journey of what that looked like. This is one of their most famous books. The one that's gotten some awards recently, and you might see it on social media. It's an amazing book, and it just speaks to, this publisher is really all about giving science-based factual information to kids, not dumbing down the information, wanting to give them the most recent state-of-the-art knowledge about what we know about science, not trying to oversimplify it. And in this example, giving them information on a number of different species. So it's pretty exciting to see what they're doing. I really enjoyed working with this group. So I just gave you a very brief overview of what the process was like in case you're curious about how it happened. So they contacted me. So I don't own copyright or royalties or anything of the book. I was kind of hired as a contract basis as a scientist to write and provide content for them, science-based content. So I liked it that way because I didn't have to worry about all of the complexities that go into publishing a book like this. I just provided the information and worked back and forth with them. So for me, it worked well, that model. So they asked me to have an outline to give them 13 topics that I wanted to cover. So they had an idea of how to plan out their book. So they told me the limits of how many pages that I had to work with. So I gave them an outline, and then I sent they asked for a bulleted description about what I was going to cover on each of the pages. I sent that to them, and then they gave that to their artist. So they have an artist, a team of artists. The artist who worked on this book is incredible. Her name is Charlotte, and she just did an amazing job. So she got each of these things as we were moving forward, and then she was doing her research online to see as much imagery as she could about the study area and about all of these different topics that I was trying to cover to inform the work that she was doing. So she got the bulleted description. She started creating the art. So she made draft spreads based on my content, and then she just sent me basically blank art with small boxes that just had X's in them. And I was told to fill in the X's with content that I wanted to write at each place. So it was like an Adobe PDF editable file. So it was very easy to go in and type what I wanted to type. And then they came back. We went back and forth a number of times. So they made edits. I made edits. They asked questions when they were not sure about something. I answered questions. They asked if I wanted to change anything, things like that. So we kept going back and forth a little bit until we got to the final version. And that's essentially how it happened. So it was a really fun process. It was really easy to work with them and really a great learning experience. So here's just the general outline. These are the topics that I chose that I wanted to cover. A general introduction and some of the basic biology and zoology topics that you might want to cover. I really wanted to cover conservation because that's closer to the research that I do. So I was kind of insisting on that component at the end there, which was really great. Let's see. So I'll show you some example pages, and then I'm going to talk about some example lessons or things that I was learning as I went through this process. So this is the first page. And I really like this page. I like how they set it up. I have a message from myself at the beginning. And what I really wanted to do with this message is invite the kids to come on this journey and invite them to become scientists. This is something that is really important to the publisher as well that I really liked. The idea is that you are inspiring the future generation of scientists. As a kid, when I would sometimes pick up books about animals, I didn't necessarily get the sense that they thought I could become a scientist or that I had a conceivable chance of becoming a scientist. So I really wanted to be intentional about saying, if you are picking up this book, it means you're passionate about animals, and it means if you want to, you can go on and have a career in this field and become the next generation of scientists. So I really wanted to make that clear from the start for the kids. And so yeah, and also just say that this journey for me started when I was 6 years old, which is similar to the age that kids might be at reading it. So to really kind of bring it full circle for them. And then have the pictures of the kids here. So then this is the second page, and this is the idea of actually the publishers. They thought, why not tell the kids, really kind of set the stage for them and invite them on the journey with us. If they were coming to be a panda researcher in the field, what would they need to bring? So that they can really visualize what it would be like to be a scientist. These are all the tools that you would want to bring and why. So it was kind of fun to put this together. And I will say it's amazing because I told them things like calipers and DBH tape, and then I didn't provide any pictures. And the artist came back with this, and I was like, that is bizarrely accurate to what those actually look like. She must have Googled and done her research because that is exactly what it looks like. So it's pretty amazing to see, you know, how serious the artist was taking her job of wanting to make everything as accurate as she could. It's really neat. So yeah, I saw this page and I was like, yeah, that camera is more fancy than the one I took for real, for sure. But some people do have fancy cameras, So yeah, so that was neat to include this. And then there's a number of different pages like this that cover different aspects of the biology. This is probably one of my favorite pages of the book. Scent marking is, from a biology standpoint, the part that I'm most fascinated about as a scientist. It's the most interesting part of giant panda behavior. It's the main way that they communicate with each other. They have an anogenital gland underneath their tail, and they leave a sticky substance on trees. And other pandas can come and smell it. They know who was there, whether it's a male or female, how old the individual is, whether the individual is dominant or subordinate, whether it's the individual is in heat or not. And so this is a primary way that they communicate. It's really interesting scientifically. There's a lot of facts to provide kids about this. And also it's so engaging to look at because you can see the different poses. And again, these are very accurate. I sent a scientific picture from a scientific article of like, these are the 4 main poses. And then the artist recreated them. I mean, to a T. Like, these are really good artistically. I can't take any credit. She's amazing. But yeah, the handstand pose is the most kind of like, it draws you in as an adult or as a kid. It's like imagining a panda doing that. They really do. They really do that. And the thing is, if the higher you're up on the tree, the more dominant you are, because the bigger you are as an individual. And so the female will know it's a bigger panda, and she's selected potentially for a larger as a preferred mate. So they're showing off, essentially. The males do this pose. So it's really interesting. So, and it's the interesting thing about this page to me too is that the artist put a bird as like a frame of reference. So like almost like the bird is the observer into this really interesting behavior. I thought that was fascinating. Again, did not tell her to do that. She kind of had her own vision of different things she was trying to accomplish artistically with different pages, which I found really fascinating. So that was really neat. Here's another example, just daily activities the different pandas do, how they spend their time. I really like this page also. I love this picture right here. The artist really was trying to show us many different poses. And again, these are accurate behavioral photos. Like if you ever go to a zoo or if you ever like go online and watch pandas on YouTube, you will see all of these different poses represented. This is not an over dramatic pose. Like pandas really, they really do that. They have a very low energetic budget. So they digest less than 20% of what they eat. So they don't have a lot of extra energy to just go expending on different things. So you do see them resting quite a lot. So it's, you know, represented here. And also this picture of the tree is also pretty accurate as well. So that's pretty neat to see all of this. This is another one of my favorite pages. This is my idea to have this page in there, and the publisher, the editor, really liked this idea. Because an observation that I had is a lot of these children's books, if they're focused on one species, it's like that's all you read about. And you don't get a sense of like that animal in context. How does that animal relate to other animals that might also be in that same space? You don't get an ecosystem perspective at all. In some of the books, anyway, that I remember. And so I was like, I want to tell kids about all these other animals that are maybe less charismatic or less known, but are also there. Because it might pique someone's interest and attention in a different way that pandas do. So the area where pandas live in China is a biodiversity hotspot. It's very colorful. That's the interesting thing about this page. High biodiversity, from an artistic standpoint, translates into color. And so this is like the most colorful page in the whole book. It's not just black and white, it's all of these different species. And it's so engaging to look at and to read about these different animals. And so it can really expand the reach of what kids are learning about in the book. And the interesting thing is that I was validated by my wanting to include this page by my nephew. My nephew, this is my nephew, Ali. He's 18 months old. My brother got him the book because it's available on Amazon. And then he, this 18-month-old, my nephew, this is his favorite page. He would wake up every morning and flip through the book and turn to this page and stare at it for like an hour every morning. And my brother was like, I don't know what it is about this page, but it's the colors. Little kids, especially this age, love bright colors. And this page was just drawing him in day after day. And for whatever reason, he was fascinated by this Timmins tragopan, the bird. This is a beautiful bird. This is one of my favorite species that I encounter in panda habitat that you don't necessarily hear about. Beautiful bird that runs along the floor, and the males display like this. It's just gorgeous colors and a beautiful species to encounter. People fly all the way from Europe to go to Southwest China to see that bird. And so I wanted to feature it there because I just love it so much. And so he loved it so much that his mom sewed it into his shirt. She sewed it right here because he kept pointing to it every day for like a month. And she was just like, I guess he loves this bird. So she sewed that for him, which is really cool. So I was like, oh, I'm so glad I included all these other species because you just don't know what's going to resonate. So here he is, he's pointing to the page. So it's neat to see like how it's received. It's pretty exciting. So yeah, so a couple of the lessons I learned of things in the process that I wanted to share with you that might inform your work or how you think about science communication. So this is a draft. This is a draft in one of the earlier pages. And I didn't have that many edits for the illustrator. As I said before, she was incredible. She did an amazing job. But I saw this page and I was like, like this is not how I want to represent Chinese people. I saw it and I was like, oh, this is like an issue that I have with how Chinese people are represented in a lot of conservation issues or issues more broadly. If you see this image here of the poacher, he looks very angry and it's a very negative portrayal. And I was like, oh, I just don't feel comfortable. And I just think it's so important. In my work with conservation, one of the biggest things I learned is how much of a gray area there is with all of the conservation issues. I went over there as a person who's so passionate about pandas, and I left as a person who's so passionate about Chinese culture. I had made so many friends and understood the complexities of what these people are dealing with trying to live in these protected areas. It's not easy. These people are struggling to make a living, and there's so many factors, and so it should not be just like dumbed down to an image like that. And so I went to them and I was like, yeah, can you take out the image? And they did. So if you see in the final version of the book, they removed the angry person and they replaced it with just a picture of the speaker. And so I was really happy that they were receptive to that. I think it's important to think about anytime you're giving a presentation about the work that you do, like how are you portraying people? in the images that you show? Does that match your values or how you think about the issue? I think it can be important to really think about. So the text here too is saying that poaching is actually one of the very few, it's very rare now. It's not a major conservation risk for pandas anymore. So that's just one thing to think about. The other issue, this is a draft of the first page, an early draft. And so they really had this idea, they wanted to show the size proportions of comparing a panda to a person. And I looked at that and I was like, cool, like that's fine. But I was thinking, is there a way that's more inviting to kids that are picking up the book? And one of the biggest challenges we face with children's books now is making sure that people feel like they're included and that they could be a scientist. And so I was like, can we have multiple different kids instead of an adult? And can we have multiple different backgrounds represented? And they said, oh, sure, great idea. And so this is the final version. So I was really happy that they were receptive to that comment that I made as well. It was just really important for me for kids to feel represented in the book. In the very few places where you see people, is there some representations? Yeah, of course, you can be a scientist too. So that was a good learning experience I wanted to share. Another one, this is another one to think about. This was an early draft of the noise page, and this is another one they were really excited about this page because they wanted to show different facial expressions of pandas because different noises mean different things. Pandas have 13 different noises. One of them is an alarm call, one is a friendly greeting, one is like a mother to a cub greeting. And so they really wanted to share all of the different information with the kids, which is awesome. But for the one with fear, they wanted to show a panda being afraid of something. It's distressing. So they put a snow leopard up here. And I was like, okay, like that's not biologically accurate. Because you can Google and find out that snow leopards have a general range in Southwest China as do pandas, but they don't live at the same elevational band. Snow leopards live at like 6,000 meters in elevation above the tree line, and pandas live at a lower elevation. So they don't actually encounter each other in real life. Like this is not a real scenario that would actually happen biologically. And the artist didn't know that, and she wouldn't. That there's nothing. You wouldn't know that unless you, like a scientist had told you. So I was like, yeah, can we change that because it's not a real. That's not a real scenario. That's not something that a panda would be afraid of. And so they did. They was like, okay, well, what would a panda be afraid of? And I said, oh, a person. So this is an accurate representation of why a panda would make a distress call, why they would run away. Pandas hate people. They hate noise. They hate smell of people. Most people living in this area never even see pandas because they run away. So this is a very accurate representation of why a panda would be making that face. So this is another thing to think about when you encounter children's books. If you ever work on science communication with kids or adults, thinking through some of the accuracy of the nuances of it could be important. So that's just one example. One other example, this is another page. For some reason from the very beginning, I don't know if it was the editor or the illustrator was very excited about this concept of elevational migration. They wanted to do a page that had a whole artistic vision. And I was like, cool. And I was also like, that's kind of complicated, and I'll explain why. So they were interested in this artistic representation of there's different elevational bands and different climates, and then pandas move at different elevations at different times. They saw that, or they read that somewhere, and they're like, oh, it would be so cool to make like an artistic interpretation of that. Kids would love it. It'd be so fun. And I'm like, yes, sure, let's do that. But the thing is, that's hard for me as a scientist is that this elevational migration pathway is different in different parts of the panda range. So as a scientist, I know that. And I think you can think about if, you know, in your own science, there's a lot of nuances and complexities that get dumbed down because you want to make it a simple pattern, and in reality, it might not be that simple. And so in the area where I work, pandas move down to a lower elevation in the spring. They move back up to a higher elevation in the winter. But in other areas of panda habitat, actually it's flipped. So how do you deal with some of those complexities? Because you want to share the information, you don't want to confuse people, but you don't want to present the wrong. So this is something that was recurring a lot in my experience of doing a children's book, because you don't want to dumb things down, but at the same time you want to accurately represent the nuance of it. So I don't know if I did the best job, but I made some edits to this to represent, like, in one area of panda habitat, this is the pattern. In other areas, it could be different. So that's just a reflection that I have about one of the challenges of science communication. So then I had the experience a couple months after this book came out in July of 2022 to go to Littlewood Elementary School, which is where my kids go to school, and it's in Gainesville, not far from here. So my older son's science teacher invited me to go to their class, and I gave a talk to 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. So four guest lectures in one day, all after another. It was exhausting. I have a lot of appreciation for elementary school teachers. It was very tiring, much harder than what I do. And but very rewarding and interesting. So I got to bring the book, and I donated the book to the classroom and passed it around, and the kids were all asking questions about it, and I talked more about the work that I do. I was really blown away by the experience. The kids were very engaged. The biggest take home that I had is that I went in thinking I would provide a lot of new information for these kids. In reality, kids today are so plugged into different forms of media. They're watching YouTube, they're watching Netflix, they're watching Amazon Prime, Disney, like all of these different things. So they're soaking up so much information on their own. And if you're encountering kids who are passionate about science, they know so much of this. So there's a show called Wildcrafts. If anyone has kids knows Wildcrafts, they did a special on pandas. Most of the kids in the class had watched the special 2 years ago and had remembered so many facts that they had learned from watching this show. So I would say they already knew maybe 50% of what I was saying. Which I was just like, I thought I was providing all this new information. They're like, oh no, yeah, I remember hearing that. So I was adding on to an additional foundation that they had already created themselves, or started to create themselves. They were very curious about more information. They wanted to know more facts. They wanted to know specifics. They wanted to know numbers. They wanted to have follow-up questions. They were so ready for all of it. And so one of the biggest things that I really learned is, like, you know, we should not be thinking about dumbing down anything for these kids. They are so smart and so ready for the complexity of what we do, that it was really inspiring, honestly. I showed a video of my GPS collar pandas of some data that I had collected, and I was showing this pattern. You could see the points moving around the screen. And this kid, 5th grade, raised his hand and said, one of those pandas I don't see moving around very much. Is that a pregnant panda? Does she have a baby? And I was like, I have presented this to college audiences so many times. Not one person has asked that question, but you're 100% correct. I was just completely blown away that he had seen this pattern of this data unfolding, never seen it before in his life. And in his brain was hypothesizing what it could mean, and he was correct. And I was sort of like, wow, okay, I guess I should prepare more next time for this crowd, because wow. Yeah, it was very rewarding. And they were passing around the book and taking notes in their notebooks on stuff they were reading in the book and stuff. So very cool, very hopeful experience. So I just want to also take some time, a couple minutes to reflect on the art aspect of this. I'm not a talented artist by any stretch of imagination. I'm very lucky that the publisher had this amazing artist that was working with us on this book. But nowadays, there's more and more appreciation for integrating arts into science education at all levels, from elementary school up to college level. There's a lot of value in it. The value is in a couple of different avenues. One of them is that some people learn by artistic expression. Some people learn in visual ways, and that could really help those learners. And also, for a lot of people, it's a stress release. And for some people in the STEM world, they encounter a lot of stress, and the artistic aspect really helps them process some of the stress that they experience as well. So so I teach an undergraduate course here at UF. I teach seniors conservation biology. I have an optional assignment in the class, which is to draw a threatened or endangered species using any artistic medium and turn it in. You would be shocked as to the number of people that do this optional activity and invest huge amounts of time in it. It's amazing to me. So this is what I'm about to show you is just this semester. And I could go into the vault and go through all past years and show you even more, but just this semester, this is what people created. Wow. So they could choose whatever species they want. They could use whatever medium they want. We have all kinds of things that people choose to do. This person, so this is a student named Daniela. She drew this by hand. It's incredible. This is a saber-toothed tiger. Then we have other people who are more into clip art, and which is totally fine. So I tell them, I'm not grading the art. I'm not qualified. Like, it's just, you do it for fun and you get a little bit extra credit type of thing. But people really go for it. And so this, somebody used Adobe Photoshop to create this GIF by hand from scratch. So it's really cool. And they always include the species name, just so I know, like, this is the exact species that they were going for. And this is another student, James, is so funny. He drew this whole scene for a sea cow. He has our fish in the corner and SpongeBob and Patrick. He put them in the corner. And then he put this like map of their range. And then there's a mom, and then there's a baby over there in the corner with a sad face. Like there's a lot going on in this image. And then he has information about when it went extinct, and it was lost to overhunting 27 years ago after discovery. So really interesting to see what people come up with. This one in the corner here is a student named Cal. So Cal wrote in the discussion board, luckily I have a friend who owns a glass studio. So I went over there and I created this from scratch using fused glass. Oh, wow. So this is fused glass. And I was just like, oh, great. Luckily, like, that's amazing. Again, this is an optional assignment in class. And so someone took the time to go and do that. It's pretty amazing to me. And yeah, speaks to the passion that some people have. You don't never know the students in the class what their interests are and what's going to really get them excited. Does anyone know what species that is? I want to guess. Kingfisher. Yes, specifically, it's a Guam Micronesian kingfisher. So, and the student wrote some specific information about the species in the discussion board. So, really fascinating. And I Googled it and it looks very similar. Like it's really hard to do fused glass. Like to make those shapes with glass is really, I mean, I don't know how long that took. I want to ask the student. And so it's amazing. So on the one hand, this could help them really absorb and learn the information and engage with material about extinction. On the other hand, you don't know what's going on with these students' lives. I mean, who knows? Maybe this student was having a really stressful week and being able to have an excuse to go into a glass studio for a day and just de-stress and do something creative could have been really valuable. So it's pretty neat to see what students come up with. Yeah, so then there's a student named Laura Haynes, and she was a UF art student. She was a double major in science and art. She was taking a senior level painting class at UF, and she said her assignment was to interview a faculty member who does research and have the faculty member explain their research. And she was supposed to take the research and then create painting, a set of painting installations based on the faculty member's research. I thought it was so fascinating. So I literally gave a presentation to her about all of my research, and I was like, here it is. And I had photos from the field and data and different things. And she was like, oh, that was really interesting. I'll go in and create something. She came back and I was like, wow, blown away by what she created. This is a really rewarding experience to have somebody with this level of talent interpret the scientific work that you do using art. So I'll show you what she came up with. So these are some of the paintings that she made. So I was so fascinated by what she came up with. And the amazing thing is that she really captured the essence of research in a way that I didn't expect. So one of the big themes in my research is this intersection between people, human, and natural systems, the built environment and the natural environment. And this image here is a part of that installation where she had these sharp edges that are supposed to represent structure and the conflict between those and the natural world. She was really interested in exploring that with painting, and I think it just came out amazing. Like I saw it and I was just like, it brought me back to the field and a lot of things that experiences I had. In this picture, in this painting, she was really exploring the cultural aspect that I was trying to share with her. The fact that I work in a protected area that has a whole farming community that lives inside of it. You could see all of their architecture and their farming, and then the red color for the Chinese culture, and the intersection between this community and the natural world through bamboo. So I love this one as well. This really brought me back to a lot of experiences I had. And then this last one I love too is really interesting. I was sharing with her the GPS collar. So all of these points of where the panda had been, and she was fascinated by these point patterns for some reason, from not a scientific perspective, but just a purely physical space perspective. And she wanted to play with that through art. So she created this. And I was also sharing her a lot about heterogeneity and how we were trying to understand, why is it those points? What is it about the patches in the habitat that pandas are choosing that? So she has this patch structure of the habitat of different types of forests that overlay with the different points. So, and then we have this bamboo over it, and this is like a mom and a baby, because I think I had told you that as well. So it's just really fascinating because I look at this and I'm like, this sums up, 10 years of my work in 3 images, which I was just blown away by it. So it can be really rewarding if you know anyone or if you yourself have this ability, this creative talent. It can help you process and understand the research in a new way, which is pretty cool. So, okay, we're almost down to 1:30. So I have these 2 books that I brought in, and I want to give it away to people. So whoever can get the trivia question can take the book home. So there's 2 books and there's 2 questions. So it's just on Amazon, but I know. So the first question. What is the giant panda's closest living relative?
Red panda.
That's a trick question. No, it's not the red panda. That's not a bad guess. That's not a bad guess. It's just not the red. Actually, I don't know if anyone knows this.
Big cat.
Big cat. Okay. Black bear.
Raccoon.
Raccoon. Second. These are all good guesses. This is actually a really hard question. I thought, yeah.
Spectacled bear.
Who is that? Is that Emilio?
Yeah, sorry. I waited to see what other people said. This is a great trivia question. And they're closely related to raccoons too, right?
Yes, a spectacled bear. Spectacled bear is
Oh, that's not fair. He's a professor of wildlife.
I waited! And why is it not fair? Don't I get to enjoy the trivia?
But he's not
So-
here.
It's an amazing disjoint distribution of sister taxa. It's crazy.
Is that in South America? Not in
Yes,
Asia?
South America. Yeah.
Oh.
So interesting. They live very far away, but they're the closest relative. So because Emilio already has a book and I'm signing his book for him, I want to give the book to the person who said black bear because that was the closest. Yes. You take the book home. And then I have one more question. Second. This one. Okay, what does the Chinese name for giant panda translate to? Dasho Mao. Black and white. Okay. Other guesses? Big bear. Big bear. Okay. Any other guesses?
Mother of the forest.
Mother of the forest. These are all good guesses.
Bamboo eater.
Bamboo eater.
Oh.
That is a good
Hmm.
Fluffy bear.
furry cat. Yes. Big bear cat. Big bear cat. And it's interesting because they're not cats, but the Chinese people, that's what their original name for the species was. So Da is big. This character is like this. This means big in Chinese. This middle character means bear. You see the four things on the bottom? That's claw. And then this, you see this part right here? That's used for a lot of different animals. It's pretty cool. So, Shane, you already have a book. Or do you? I said big bear. You said I'm gonna give it to you. You said big bear. Okay, you should take it home. Yeah, so congratulations to the winners. And it's also free, it's available online.